Welcome to another Cheesy class. This is two cars moving at high speed through a bridge, and it was all done in Cinema4D. And let me show you how. I've created a graphical roadmap to show you guys the steps I took in order to make this. So it begins with a concept. You have to find good concept materials. So what you can do is go on a site like Pinterest and type in car chase, and you'll marvel at the image that are being shown to you. Once you can download a couple of these pictures, put them in an editing app like Photoshop, so you can have a general idea of the mood, the tone, and the feel you want your scene to be. Remember, you're not just a CGI artist, you are a storyteller. Once you gather enough scenes that match what you want to create and you have a solid idea, then we can hop to modeling. There are two ways to approach modeling. You can either model the car you want to use, or you can go ahead and buy it. A lot of cars have already been modeled with high fidelity, and you can find them on the internet on sites like Turbo Squid, CG Trader. You can decide to buy the model, or you can decide to model it by hand. Both ways work fine. It's just modeling it by hand tends to be a lot more time consuming. And if you have a tight deadline like I did, it's just better to buy it, right? If your deadline isn't as tight, you can decide to model it and save some of that dough, right? Once you've gotten your car model ready, it's time to set up your material. The car coating is not just a glossy material, it is a clear coat material, which is layers of glossy material. Lucky for you, you can easily do this in Cinema4D using Corona. That is one personal thing I like about Corona in the engine. Working with materials is really easy. One thing to spice up realism is to add in surface imperfections. I didn't add too much surface imperfections to my own, but if realism is your goal, remember to add surface imperfections. So things like scratches, fingerprints, smears, water condensation. Once you are done adding the materials to your car, you have to test it. And when you are testing it, you test it using various HDRIs. This is to check that, okay, this looks good in every lighting scenario. Let's set up our environments. If you want to have the car in a live action or in a CG environment, the steps you will follow are different. I want to have it in a CG environment. There are two ways you can go about it. You can either model it by hand or get a model online. Try to go on CG Trader and get a model of the bridge, right? When you're working with environment, work from whole to part. That makes it very easy to cover a really large scale environment. So if you're trying to work in an environment whereby a lot of buildings and everything, right? So you have to get your ground map first, get your road tributary. So only the point that are going to show for a long enough screen time, you have high fidelity. Every area from the distance and get away with low fidelity, where you can just use a single PNG image on a plane. I hope that makes sense. Animation. You have to rig the car, right? So that you can animate it. And you don't just animate the car by animating the rotation of the tires. No, you don't do that. You have to do it in a procedural way so that as you move the car, the tires will roll in proportion to the distance at which you move the car. In order to achieve this, in Cinema4D, you can make use of expressos, which is actually straightforward. What I ended up doing was I stumbled upon a preset that had already done the work with expresso, where you're just dragging the models to the designated file in the preset. Within a couple of seconds, your car is already rigged. I think it cost about $1. But if you don't want to spend a dime, I will also link down in the comment section below on how to make it yourself. One rule is base it off real driving references. You don't want to animate from your head. Really easy to mess it up when you animate it from your head. So you want to add a drift, get references of that drift. Also, when you're animating, your scene can get sluggish. So if you're working with a really dense geometry, especially if you're working with multiple cars, what you can do is you can animate this in a different project file. You understand? So just take the car and take the road to a different project file, then animate it on that project file, then bring only the car back. That is one simple way to work with this. Let me know if there's any concept I've mentioned so far that you'd like me to make a video on. Another thing again is that the tire should be attached to the road, right? So if the road is bumpy, it will be really difficult for you to manually have to animate that. So a good way is to use Expresso to link it. Another thing to pay attention to is your camera. Make your camera off real camera positions. Don't bring out camera movements from the air. So imagine there's a real person holding the camera or probably in a car behind following your car. You can also animate the camera shake. But how I do it is by just adding the vibrate tag to the camera. And when I do that, the camera starts to vibrate. So the camera movement looks more handheld and looks like the camera is also following the car in rough and bumpy terrain. Another reason to add camera shake is to build anticipation. Camera shakes build good anticipation, right? So once you have done all this, now we can move to rendering. So one thing you should do is to enable motion blur before you render and not add it in post. And also enable object motion blur. There's camera motion blur and there's object motion blur. Camera motion blur only takes into account the camera movement. It doesn't take into account the object movement. So if you have two objects moving fast and moving on similar speed with the camera, the object should come out sharp unless the object accelerates faster than the camera. It is also a good idea to add in depth of field. With in depth of field, enable depth of field, and you're good to go. So in this case, I use 2.8 because 1.8 we get too blurry and it takes a lot longer to render. One thing you can also do to sell this variable is to add bloom. Bloom will give that highlight glow that makes it look natural, right, while rendering. Once you are done with your rendering, carry everything to your editing software, then you start editing what you have rendered, right? Your color grade, you can make it a lot more dramatic, a lot more cinematic, add black bars and make it all cool. Then add sound effects, so your tire screeches, your engine revving, those are the subtle things that make this scene look very believable. The visuals and the audio. Don't forget to add good music. A big part of editing is audio. So take your time with the song selection. You can go to sites like Epidemic Sounds and get good audio from there. Or if you don't want to spend a dime, then you can use Pixabay. You can use Mixkit, and Mixkit offers really good audio too. Also, I put a couple of tutorials in the description below. Tutorials on if you want to model the car yourself, how you go about doing that in Cinema 4D. If you want to make a car rig, how you go about doing that in Cinema 4D. And various other tutorials that I feel like might be important to this. I'll see you again in the next Chisai class.